All
Hey,
right, so we're
Jen.
joined from the shore of the Allegheny River in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, by my friend Diahanna Hackett from Mississippi, Jackson State alum, member of AKA sorority, and now a data systems analyst with Lanxess, one of the largest multinational chemical corporations in the world. We've got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for all of our computer science engineering students at all of our middle schools and high schools from Madison County Schools, as well as our YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for joining us and taking some time for us today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pickett, for that warm welcome, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm so looking forward to sharing my experience and my pathways with the students.
Yeah, and before we get into what all you do, and like I said, we did watch two short videos just a few minutes ago about some of the things that you guys do, but I think it's important to for them to know you're from Magnolia, Mississippi. Just down
Yes,
I-55, South Pike High School, very
yes.
rural area, not a lot near there. And then you made the, you did went to the HBCU, Jackson State University. So talk a little bit about that experience and what drove you to Jackson State and what you studied at Jackson State.
Yes, so just as you said, born and raised in Magnolia, Mississippi, went to South Pike High School. During that time, South Pike had one of the best scholastic programs, teaching to the ACT, making sure the students were very well prepared to go to any university that they chose or any technical institution that they chose. Because my brother did choose to go to DeVry after his graduation. I had my oldest brother also, South Pike graduate, chose to go to Millsaps, which is a private institution right there in Jackson, Mississippi. So with that, my choices became, I wasn't interested in the technical side of it. I always knew I wanted to major in science. I thought at the time that I wanted to be a physical therapist because my mother was a physical therapist assistant. So I started taking classes in high school that spoke to that and helped prepare me for that. And in those instances, I kept hearing more about Jackson State, more about Ole Miss and the University of St. Louis, all very good colleges that prepared me for my future. So I also started considering cost because I knew I wasn't going to have a scholarship. So that was going to be debt that I was going to be incurring. So I started comparing the price of tuition for each of the schools that I was interested in. Jackson State was one of the cheapest universities. And on top of that, they offered me the opportunity to do research during the summer where I got a stipend for $1,000 just for being there for 2 months. And as an 18-year-old, $1,000 is a lot of money, especially when you don't have bills. And then after, when I started school at Jackson State University, they continued to pay me for doing research for like 10 hours a week, and I would get $500 a month, which meant that now I have pocket money on top of, whatever else I wanted to do at Jackson State. So it offered so many opportunities that I didn't think was possible traveling, because I came from a not financially, stable family all the time. So I got to travel and see things and meet new people while I was in college. And Jackson State afforded me all those opportunities.
Yeah, and also you're a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Just had the Founders Day, and we have a few teachers here
Yes,
at Thomas Jackson that are members as well. But I always like to hit on that briefly with our kids, because they see the glitz and the glamour, they see the stepping and the strolling and the ski-weeing, and all that's a lot of fun. I've been to step shows in my life and the probates, and all that is really cool. But there's so much more to it than that. There's a lot of community service and a lot of behind the scenes and a lot of networking that goes on with that.
yes.
Our vice president of the United States right now is at AKA, and we don't see her stepping and strolling. I mean, when you get our age, it's kind of tough anyway. But but she had used that platform to promote the sisterhood and the community service of the great organization.
Yes, and just as you said, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. These sororities, even at the local level, act as their own government, and they act as a business, if I could say so. And so there's people that are in certain offices and positions that have different responsibilities and things that they have to do in order to make those community service activities take place, in order to make those voter registration activities take place. We're really heavy on bringing awareness to illnesses that affect our community, such as heart disease and breast cancer. And so it's about providing education. It's about strengthening our communities to make sure that we're all in the best position possible. And we also provide financial literacy education to the community as well. So being able to network, pull people within our organization to offer that education, and then also helping children, it's all organization and people skills. And so those are also things that you bring to the table that when you start interviewing for certain jobs, because now you've gotten that experience speaking to large crowds, taking lead in big projects, and organizing people in order to get large things done.
Yep. Now, and obviously, coming from Jackson State and now even going to a big city like Pittsburgh, how does a little girl from Magnolia, Mississippi, go work for a multinational corporation in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania after coming from Jackson State?
It was completely by accident. So I always told people, and I'm pretty sure you've told your students as well, if you shoot for the moon, you'll land amongst the stars. So as I said before, I was planning to be a physical therapist. That's what I said all through my tenure at Jackson State with my bachelor's degree. I'm going to be a physical therapist. So after my 4 years getting my bachelor's degree, I decided, okay, I'm a little tired, so I'm going to take a year or so off. And so during that time, I worked at Express Limited Brands in the mall in Jackson, actually at North Park. And that's when I started building my people skills, being able to talk to people, being able to problem solve, because when people come into the stores, they're just not looking to shop. Sometimes they have problems. Sometimes, there's other things going on. So I decided I didn't want to be here because these long nights, early mornings, too much. So I went back and got my master's degree, where Jackson State again said, well, we'll pay you $30,000 a year just to work, just for you to go to school, just for you to do your research and graduate on time. Sounds good to me. And it was tax-free money. And it's because I was in the STEM. So I go from there to a requirement was that I had to apply for several PhD programs while I was in the master's program. And I also had to apply for funding along the way to make sure that my education for my PhD was somewhat subsidized. So, because as I said, we're still incurring debt as we're going to school, and it's not for everyone. So I applied to the GEM Fellowship, which is Graduate Education for Minorities, which is also available for a master's degree, and some bachelor's students can apply for it as well. And so they said, well, you have to do some time with some corporate office, and then you have to come back and go to school. Well, I hadn't had my mind completely made up on the PhD program, but I was upfront with them about that. And the HR representative at then Bayer Material Science, now Covestro, said, just come to us anyway. They like you for your interview. So I came to Pittsburgh, what I thought was going to be 3 months, and they liked me extended. And then once I started working with them, they got used to me. They got used to my personality, because personality is always key. They start talking to other big corporate organizations about me, because industry is so small. Everyone knows everyone, especially when you live in a place like Pittsburgh where there's so many businesses right next door to one another. So as one director of the Environmental Health Product Safety Group was saying, we need somebody, the other director was like, we have someone. Why don't you interview her? And so they interviewed me. They liked me. I had little to no experience, and they just trained me right there on the job. And I wound up being here now 12 years.
That's awesome. Now, the one thing I did mention before you came on as well is that, with you being in chemical data, the need for chemical engineers and chemical data analysts is going to keep growing, because literally chemicals
Yes.
touch everything that we own, everything that we use, everything that we wear. I didn't, and I was looking at a video Lanxess put out. I did not realize that leather that we sit on and we put in our bodies
Yes.
is 40% chemical. That is incredible.
And even bubble gum is rubber.
Yeah. So, so what I was, and I'll let you explain it. But what you do at Lanxess, Lanxess does a lot of creating chemicals for these companies to
Yes.
make their product. So you're the product before the
Yes.
product, and you have to make
Yes.
it can be transported, it can be handled, it can be disposed of, it can be used properly before it ever is manufactured and then given to the customer. Because like we said, if somebody's going to build something and pay money for something, they want to make sure they can use it. And with the growing automation of manufacturing, the need for these data analysts and these engineers and these chemists is going to keep growing and keep growing. And it is a very, very detail oriented job, but a very rewarding and very lucrative job.
Yes. Yes. Just as you said, Lanxess manufactures so many different materials, from leather, as you said, to colorants for pigments, like you see for Sherwin-Williams and for PPG. We have customers from Lubrizol, customers from Bayer. We have customers from Pfizer as well, from the COVID vaccine. So what happens, just as you said, something has to be manufactured before it goes somewhere else and turns into something else entirely. So in this particular case, let's just say a cake. If someone decides, okay, we need this flour to be manufactured, I have to be the one to say, okay, what goes in there? We call it the goes in there. What are all the ingredients that goes in there? We need to know the physical chemical properties of that. So there's someone in a laboratory that's making a sample of it, and they can tell us, okay, this is color, this is the odor. Why does odor matter? Because you can't have someone transporting this material that's got a putrid smell to it, because they're going to pass out. You can't have something like that traveling on the bottom of an airplane either. We fly all the time, but we never think about the chemicals that may be being transported in the bottom of the Bay Area of the flight, because this happens all the time. Same thing with trains. So I'm at the end of it where some toxicologist that has their PhD has done some type of study on these materials already, and I come in and I help interpret what that means in terms of GHS, which is the globally harmonized system of classifications and labeling. So then after I interpret what this means, I also have to communicate that, which goes back to my express days and learning how to communicate with different people on different platforms, going back and communicate that same information to our dangerous goods people. And you see all the time on the back of 18-wheelers, those 4-digit numbers that are there, they're just numbers identifying what's on the back of those trucks. And then what's the hazards? It may be flammable, because you've seen that flame on the back of it in the diamond, or what they call the square on point. Or you may see something like a cylinder, which means that it's an explosive gas or compressed gas being transported. So then I think Sherwin-Williams at the stores, you'll see what the diamond with the several numbers and all that. And it just says health hazards and all that. So information that I do gets interpreted to all different ways, so that other people, I think you've had truck drivers, engineers, and other people that work in plant facilities and transportation here in their interviews. I'm the person that sits behind them, that's telling them, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. This is the PPE, or personal protective equipment, that needs to be worn when you're handling this material, because even truck drivers have to be able to read that information. So I'm the person that translates it for them.
Yeah, and that's a great way to explain it, because the safety of the people has got to be the most paramount. And then one thing Lanxess also does in the pharmaceutical industry, they've made the chemicals for bug spray. If people are, hold on.
Yes.
If people are going to put things on their skin, it's going to have to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, with the COVID vaccine, if people are going to put something in their body, it's going to have to be tested and it's going to have to be safe, which leads me to my next question.
Right.
One thing I've asked all these guests that I've had, because these kids, as smart as they are and as gifted as they are, we'll do a project that mess up one time. This is too hard, I quit. How often do people in these careers, in these STEM careers, get it right the first time?
Very rarely. It is very rarely that we get it right the first time. It has to be done repeatedly. And in most cases, we have to be able to think outside of the box. So for Lanxess, we have our tree where we always say being able to work as a team and being able to take leadership and ownership of different things that are going on. So that means speak up if something's not going according to. Working as a team, meaning bring in your colleagues, because you may not understand it when you read it at 8 o'clock in the morning. So take a minute, step back, bring in some colleagues, start talking to them, and whatever they say might trigger something for you to go back and say, okay, I got it.
Yeah, and that's something that we, I can speak for the other people in the district, is that we really try to push, and I'm sure you're familiar with the engineering design process. It is a process of testing, seeing what works the best, seeing what solution would have the best fit. And then the teamwork aspect is a big part of that, because, you coming from a small high school and then going, and Jackson State's not a huge university, but it's still a large school. You're going to have to learn to work with people you may not like. You're going to have to work with people that may not have English as their first language. You have to work with people that may be older or younger. And then one thing that I noticed just watching the Lanxess videos, I did not see a lot of women, and I did not see a lot of people that were not white. So that is a very big deal.
Yes.
When it comes, and I know you're a big minority to STEM advocate. So
Yes.
how was that experience? Because obviously this is a very fast growing field and a very important field, but there's still kind of a ceiling that seems to be there in this industry.
So in all transparency, it was very overwhelming, because that was the first thing I saw when I got to Pittsburgh. There were very few people in that part of town that actually looked like me. So I'm coming from Jackson State, which is an HBCU. Everybody looks like me. And even if we don't speak the same language, we understand each other. So then I come to Pittsburgh and I get put into these rooms, and it's people from so many different nationalities, because as you mentioned, Lanxess is an international company. We're global. So then our headquarters is in the EU. So now I'm talking to people from Mannheim. I have coworkers in Brazil. I have coworkers that are in China, and we're all working together and trying to manage time differences as well. So something that could have been done immediately, we have to wait on our Chinese colleagues, which are 12 hours behind us or ahead of us, to be able to come back in the office and answer their questions from the day before.
Yeah.
So speaking to the ceiling, I would say that we've made huge turnarounds, especially, during the COVID and the lockdown, taking a look at ourselves and saying, okay, we have to make some changes here. We have to have some people that look like the employees that are there. And with me being in the corporate office, it was always quite surprising for them to see me walk into certain rooms, especially with my big hair, my Southern accent, and everything about me. So I'm going to always stand out regardless of whichever room I went into within the building. And especially when I visited the plants, I think that the plants were more receptive to me, because most of the people in the plants that were further below looked like me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because first of all, I've always said the world doesn't owe anybody anything. I don't care who you are. But second, one thing, none of us chose to be from Mississippi. I don't care who you are. When you go to a place like Pittsburgh, and I know it's a great place, but people are going to have preconceived notions because of where you're from.
And there's a lot of us.
Whether you're black, white, male, female, they're going to look at you differently because of media, because of the way the media portrays, and just preconceived notions. And it is tough to overcome those obstacles to make yourself stand out. So I think, you talk about, that retail job you had in college, learning to communicate. These kids get so mad when we make them give a presentation, they think we're being so mean. That's not the case. You have to learn to sell yourself.
It's the
You have
best
to be able to
practice.
communicate. In your case, you have a very important job that people's lives are at stake, literally, and people's safety.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to write that in an effective way, and you have to be able to speak that in an effective way. And then when you are on the
Exactly.
manufacturing side with the engineers and the specialists, the trade people, you got to let them know exactly how this works. So, like we said, it has to be stored correctly, has to be transported, it has to be disposed, and it has to be used correctly. And then at the end of the day, there's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And so I typically call it code switching, because the way I'm going to talk to people in the plant is not going to be the same way I'm going to talk to people within the corporate office or when I'm on the global call. And so as I sit there and I talk to the people within the plant, I'm pretty much on the phone translating what was said at the previous meetings and just saying, this is all they want y'all to do. They want y'all to do this, boom, boom, pow, pow. Let's just get it done. It's got to be done in this way. And they understand that versus me coming into the office and talking, hi, guys, how are you doing today? This is what we have to do. We have to go and read through these studies. Like, no, there's a time and a place for everything. And doing those presentations and standing in front of the class, I feel like that was the best practice for me, because it allowed me those opportunities to sharpen those skills. It allowed me those opportunities to be able to communicate, because it's great to be able to understand things at a higher level, but it's even better if you can communicate it in layman's terms. And that's what I've always been taught.
Yeah, and before I get to these students' questions, one thing I do want to hit on too is, how often does the technology change in your field? Because obviously, I don't want to
Every
give
2
away
years.
close to the same age, but Justin and since we've graduated from college, technology has changed immensely. You can't just get a degree and just say, here's the way it's going to be done. Especially in a corporate setting, technology is always going to change. Software programs are going to change. So, what are some of the things that you've seen change just in your time in this field?
So we have a running joke going right now in the office that our software for our SDS authoring and data manipulation changes about every 2 years. What does this mean? The Lanxess portfolio of chemicals is over 2,000, 4,000 products strong. And we're a global company, which means that one product could have several SDSs for many different countries.
Wow.
Several different regulations. So that means that every time they change the software for us, we have to start reauthoring SDSs from scratch, which means that we're in the office all day, almost 24/7, just going home to sleep and change and get back together for the next day to reauthor and complete these tasks. We have deadlines that we have to abide by. And so that means that even if you have something going on at home, you can't bring that to the office with you. You have to be able to work efficiently. So, and you have to also be able to understand how the previous system works so that you can carry that over to the new system and figure out what you need and what you didn't need, what worked better previously and what did not work better, and take that over. So then now we've learned our lesson. Now we're able to centralize how we're doing it. So it's interesting. It's a bit stressful at times, but it keeps you on your toes. So that means that a lot of times people in the office, or when they think of office jobs, they think of every day is the same. It is not.
I mean, especially in these STEM careers, it really is different every day, anytime you're dealing with technology. But I'm gonna get to many of these questions as I can. This first one is Brenda Escudero. She's a senior, and she asked, what is the part of your job you enjoy the most?
That it's not mundane, that every day is something different. Because if an 18-wheeler turns over on the interstate, somebody's got to get a call, and we've got to get some information over to first responders to make sure that that chemical or whatever spilled is cleaned up. Or if there's something that happens within a plant, there has to be someone that's able to, communicate on what's going on. Data within chemistry, because technology is changing, as Mr. Pike just said. That means that we're able to get better results And that's how we're able to find out that something that we've been using the entire time is now a carcinogen or causes cancer. So now we have to organize at a global scale how we update our information. And you're talking to people from all over the world. And so you're learning things all the time. So I'm never sitting stagnant. There's always something going on. And it's never a day of where I'm just pushing papers and board.
Yeah. And now this is a great question. And Miss Thompson, our chemistry teacher, will be glad this is asked. This is Aaliyah Chesser. She's a junior. And she asked, what is the most dangerous part of your job? Do you have to worry about breathing in chemicals or touching chemicals? And do you use any special tools?
So I don't work within the plant. So I never have to worry about breathing or touching it unless I have to go visit a facility to go and talk to them or do training about something. The most dangerous part of my job is being wrong. So if I come into the office and I'm foggy and I miss something, like I said, causes cancer or can mutate your genetic code in some type of way or, inhibit the ability for someone to be able to reproduce, now there's a lawsuit that could happen. There's millions of people that are at stake. And we have a lot of stuff that goes into personal care. So you don't want me to have a foggy day or not paying attention because I'm listening to what's going on World Star. And here we go. Now millions of people have cancer, and I could have prevented that.
Yeah. And this is a great lead into the next question. This is Catherine Johnson. She's also a junior, and she asked, do you ever get nervous knowing that you're dealing with potentially dangerous chemicals?
Yes, all the time. I do especially get nervous, especially if I classify it the wrong way. And that's why I'm always detail oriented and trying to get as much information as possible.
This is Layla Young. She's a senior. She's our Miss Velma Jackson. And she asked, what advice would you give a high school student that wanted to pursue a career in chemicals and in chemicals, chemistry, and chemical engineering?
I would tell them, number one, be sure that you're interested in the STEMs as far as biology and chemistry, because those are your majors that you're going to have to be in. And so if you're not interested in that, if you're not interested in, finding new ways to do things, then I wouldn't recommend it. So I would always, and take every opportunity to learn as much as possible and communicate it as much as you possibly can. Because saying it out loud helps you get used to hearing it, and then also gets you more comfortable in communicating it.
Yeah, and I would also say in any field, find like you did, find a way to do some research, find a way to do those internships.
Yes.
So that way you get you'll get a little taste of what the career is before you're just jumping in there and you've moved across the country and you hate it. That would be
absolutely.
Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. But before we go, I just do want to, I want to get your perspective, because like everybody here, you grew up in a small town in Mississippi, very rural area, just like we are here at Velma Jackson. And we have some with dreams of going to HBCU. We have some that want to go to PWI or trade school, whatever, and that's fine. But you're still coming from the same beginnings. And you have a story that's still being written that is just unbelievably successful. We'll put your resume up against any guest we've had.
Oh, thank you.
But with these kids that are in the same spot that you were not that long ago, what can they do to follow in the footsteps of someone like you?
I say be open-minded, because as I said before, this was not my initial dream. So being open-minded to the fact that things change along the way, being open-minded to being able to explore new options. Because when I went back for my master's degree at Jackson State, I still had no idea. I did my interview for my program, and I was like, I see all these recall commercials on television, and I want to know, who could have prevented that? Yeah. Who could have changed something? And at that moment, I had no idea that this job even existed.
Wow.
So with that, I was speaking my career into existence and not even knowing. So what I would have done, had I known it existed, there's so many plants that are in Mississippi. there's Ecolab, there's Sanderson Farms, there's Tyson, there's Nissan, there's Amazon. Talk to someone that you know that works there. Ask them if you come in for a week during the summer and just shadow someone. Being able to walk around and talk to different people there to see what they do, how they do it. Schedule some time if you can. So that way you'll see all the opportunities available to you, because as far as I knew, at Sanderson Farms in Macomb, Mississippi, or Summit, Mississippi, was that you could just sling chickens all day. And so I didn't know there was someone in a safety position there. I didn't know there was someone in an environmental position there. Had I known that, I would have started shooting towards that direction quicker, more than waiting a little bit longer. So just
And
talk
all
to the
those
people that you
plants,
have available to you.
all those plants you just mentioned use an unbelievable amount of chemicals. And that's something that I learned recently.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a huge need for anybody, especially these young ladies and any minority student, to really look into these chemical careers, because they are not going away.
No time soon. If anything is going to increase, and I can say, especially within my department, we have increased numbers tremendously since I've been there.
Wow.
So it's an open market.
That's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for taking some time for us today, all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Mississippi native, STEM advocate, chemical expert, Diahanna Hackett. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I wish all your students the best and much success.
All right. Talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.